Muito boa tarde, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our last session, our fourth part of this 4-day event commemorating the bicentennial of Brazil's independence, 200 years. And of course, on behalf of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute from California State University, Fresno, PBBI, on behalf of our Portuguese language program, also at Fresno State, the Portuguese language program and its director at California State University, Stanislaus, our neighbors to the north. It is wonderful to have joined forces with my good friend, Professor Renato Alvim, who I've known ever since he's arrived here in California and who's been a dear friend and wonderful colleague as well. And as we were able to put forth all of our resources and bring this 4-day commemoration of the bicentennial of Brazil's independence, actually one of the very few times that, as far as the Portuguese language programs are concerned, that we have two CSUs, two universities from the California State University system, collaborating on such an initiative. But Brazil is a huge country. It took at least two universities to put this together. And so we are two of the 23 campuses of the California State University system, for those of you who don't know, and for those of you following us in different parts of the world. And so we have 23 campuses throughout the state of California with 500,000 students, which is the largest state or the largest public and private university system in the entire world, not just in the United States, but in the entire world, with over 500,000 students throughout the 23 campuses. I'm going to turn it over to Professor Renato Alvim, and then we'll have our guests introduce themselves. We're going to have a panel discussion about the Brazilian diaspora in California and Brazil, because Sunday is election day in Brazil. So we'll try to stay off of politics a little bit, but there's always, politics is an important part of life. It determines our country, and in this case, the Brazilian country and the Brazilian future. So, and then the second part will be with a musician who will join us around 5 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time for a presentation to end this with Brazilian music. Professor Renato Alvim.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, all you who are present today and this afternoon or tonight, depending on where you are. And I'd like also to thank the president of the AATSP, the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese, Dr. Rachel Mamia Hernandez, who is honoring us with her presence. Obrigado, Raquel. And welcome all of you and our panelists as well. And I hope we all enjoy this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Renato. And we'll turn to Rachel and ask her if she would mind greeting, of course, our guests and those of you following us on social media outlets. We want to thank the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese for being part of this journey, for being one of the events coordinators, as well as I should say, as the Luso-American Development Foundation, flat from Lisbon, Portugal, who was also a partner of ours. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Boa tarde e boa noite, né? Depending on where you are. I want to just express again my excitement to be here and to be a part of this, and really to thank Renato and Janice and their universities for putting these series of events together. It's so important that we celebrate and that we share and learn about the cultures of the Portuguese-speaking world, and specifically Brazil in this case. The American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese is one of the oldest and largest language-specific teaching organizations in the United States. We have over 10,000 members, most of which teach Spanish, but of course we have a very important contingent like us that are teachers of Portuguese, and really part of the heart of our mission is celebrating the cultures, those are Brazilian cultures and the cultures of the Portuguese-speaking world. And while I have no discernible musical talent, I am a huge fan of music, so I'm excited to be here. Obrigada.
Obrigado nós. Thank you so much. And we're going to turn to our panelists. And what What I'm going to do is ask each panelist if he or she does not mind introducing themselves. They can do a better job than I can. I have some notes here, but I'd like them to talk a little bit about themselves. So to take about 5 to 6 minutes and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story, your connection, of course, to Brazil, and then we will start the conversation. We'll start ladies first, so we'll start with Ana Clara, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. This is a great event. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Renato. Thank you, Valeria. I would like to introduce myself a little. My name is Ana Clara Vogler. I am an attorney in Brazil and in California. In Brazil since 2000, California since 2017. I live here since 2014. In Brazil, I was a tax attorney, a nerdy attorney. In California, I work mostly with family law and immigration. I think one of the challenges of every immigrant that comes to the US is figure out a new career and a new path. And I discovered myself in a new area of law due to the Brazilian community in California. We have several immigration attorneys, but we did not have a lot of family law attorneys. And we had a lot of people that were Portuguese speakers and could not communicate very well in English and did not understand the American court system. So they were almost being crushed by the system for not understanding the process. So I ended up going to family law in California to help people how to navigate the family law, to keep the children with their parents. And my knowledge between Brazil law and US law made my practice unique because I am able to work with international family law matters. Hague Convention, international child kidnapping cases. And I'm very grateful for this country that receives the immigrants with open arms and give us the opportunity to recreate ourselves and to use our language skills to favor our community and to favor the country as a whole, integrating the immigrants and educating the immigrants in the new system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Fascinating, fascinating career. Thank you so much. We'll turn to Caio Rocha Lopes de Lima, here from the Central Valley.
Hola. Hello. So I'm Caio. As Mr. Borges mentioned, I came to the United States when I was 14 years old. So I've been here now for 20 years. I'm 34 now. I arrived here as a freshman in high school. And in fact, I was placed in Mr. Borges' class, Portuguese class. That's how we met. It was a very difficult transition, as you might imagine. You start high school and you don't speak a word of English or not much English at all. And you have to navigate that system. But that's how my life in America started. I ended up graduating high school here, going to college and grad school in the United States, and developing my career here. I currently work for Tulare County, county where I actually went to high school at, and I work as an administrative specialist. I work with budgets. I do budgets for social services for the county, and the area that I specialize is child welfare services, foster care, and that whole world. My connection with Brazil remains very strong. Of course, I go to Brazil pretty often now. I just went last year, in fact. I have a lot of family in Brazil, lots of family from Brazil, come to visit me. So I have maintained a pretty close contact with Brazil and that part of my identity, I suppose.
Thank you, Caio. Thank you so much. And I think did you get your bachelor's at Fresno State? Yes, right?
I did. I got my
Yes.
bachelor's at Fresno State, and I went to grad school at Fresno State also.
Oh, he's a bulldog all the way. Yes.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. See, thank you, Caio, so much. And from Caio, we're going to go to our third guest, Edivaldo de Lima. Eddie, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Oh, thank you, Denise and Renato, to put this together. And my special thanks to Valeria that reached out to me and made the invitation. My name is Edivaldo de Lima. I came to the US, believe it or not, November of 1985, the day of the election. As a young man, I went to the street and I was in front of, Neves and Guimarães and all these people. But on that day, I had to leave. And I blame myself for many years, but I'm okay now. So yeah, I was involved with the Brazilian community in the Bay Area. For the last 22, 23 years, I've been involved with the Brazilian Catholic community. In the Bay Area in general, but especially in the East Bay, where we have a group, we have a council, and we're very active with, promoting cultural events, not only religious, but cultural events, which I'm very proud to be part of it. I'm a father of three, two girls and a boy, and they all speak Portuguese. That's the rules in the house. We go quite often to Brazil. I never left Brazil in my mind. I'm very much involved with politics, and right now you have to hold me back because I can go a long way. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
We won't hold you back. No. There'll be opportunity for everybody to voice their opinion. And last but certainly not least, my very good friend Valeria, who I've met many years ago, but it's been many years ago, but we were both young. We were just babies when we met. And so Valeria is an icon to me in the Brazilian community, an icon in the Portuguese community, in the Lusophone community. She bridges a lot of both of the worlds. She understands that we are much stronger if we can look at ourselves as one community with many different nuances. The Lusophone communities, whether they be Portuguese from Portugal, Brazilians from Brazil, Azorians, as we like to call ourselves, from the Azores, or Cape Verdeans or Angolans, etc. And so, Valeria, welcome, and thank you for reaching out to Ana Clara and Eddie, because we, of course, appreciate all that you do.
The pleasure is all mine. It's always very nice to be with you, Denise, these events. Renato now, great. And Raquel, I just met you today. So this is great. I love these connections we promote in between both communities. Yes, I believe in the bridge between the communities, and I'll keep doing that as far as I can see. I don't know about the icon part of it, but anyway, I'm here for 23 years. I immigrated because of love. I fell in love with an American citizen who was in the military, so he couldn't go. I had to come. And I finished all my studies in the United States, the BA and the master's degree in education. I'm very involved with the Portuguese language and the Brazilian community. I believe we have to reinforce our roots, who we are, and we all first generation immigrants, we are in that boat. So I think it's up to us to continue our traditions and our language and our culture. And plus it's a big, I think that bridging the cultures, we are more tolerant and doing better for the country where we are living and the country we left behind, but we never leave. So yeah, and like Edivaldo, elections coming up, I can't stop thinking. So hold me back.
Well, there's a lot of euphoria already, and hopefully it'll be for a good cause. Indeed, Professor Renato Alvim was saying that he's going to go vote on Sunday, and he's going to go early and be ready to stand in line hours and hours if need be. That's wonderful to see the democratic process, of course, in Brazil. We're going to go back to kind of the same area, the same order, if you don't mind. And I know that Valeria has to leave in about 30 minutes. And of course, Professor Renato Alvim can interrupt anytime he wants to. But I'd like to ask you a little bit. And all of you have different experiences with the Brazilian community here in California. But how do and Clara, with your special situation as being an attorney practicing in both countries, having to deal with family law, how do you see and dealing with the community here, and of course their relatives and their family and friends when it comes to some of these issues? How do you see the community here in California? How has it adapted? And you're a recent immigrant, although you've been here practicing for a few years. How does the community, you feel, organize itself, and how does it how did you see it when you first arrived, the community that is of Brazilian descent here? Most of them, as Valeria said, and Eddie, most of them immigrants. It's not as an older community as the Portuguese community has been here for 140 years or whatever it has been. But what was the adjustment like for you? You used a wonderful line, this country that allows us to recreate ourselves. And I've always thought that's a good thing about America, even in certain parts of our history, as far as this country is concerned, when that recreation was kind of told us how we were supposed to be. But lately that hasn't been the case, especially in the last 50 years. Immigrants can really recreate themselves. So tell us a little bit about your experience and how you have seen this experience in the Brazilian community, please.
I think the first point of contact is the consulate. At least for me, was I met friends and people that were very important for my formation as an attorney here in the meetings at the Brazil consulate. In LA, the BCCC, that is the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, and in the Bay Area was more with related associations, was a little in the consulate, but then with reference that I got inside the consulate. For example, the first time I spoke with Valeria, I was in court in Santa Clara and I needed an interpreter. We had a witness that never said she did not speak English. At the time of the hearing, she said, I need an interpreter. And I was like, oh my God. And then was the first time I spoke with Valeria. So I think the consulate promoted a lot of relations between people. And from there I got my bar tutor. I got some other attorneys, friends. I got the first few clients. They have published a list of the attorneys in their areas. They make the recommendations. So I think was very important because like Valeria, I came to live in the United States because of my husband. And all of a sudden we are in a new country and with a new family, and our connections, our life connections are in Brazil. So we are missing our friends, our families, and we find in this, in the Brazilian community and in these events, new friends and new ideas and the ways to adapt to the new country. So I think as a first resource was the Brazilian consulate, for sure.
So consular services are important to keep everyone kind of connected in different parts. It's a huge state. Caio, of course, you talked about going to high school. You were very young. It was a total different experience. But there's not a lot of Brazilians in the Central Valley, probably just a half a dozen families that I know of anyway. There may be another few more, but how do you keep in touch with your roots? Of course, other than the trips to Brazil, how do you keep in touch with your roots, with the music, with who you are as a Brazilian in the United States? Although, like you said, you've been here 20 years, but still, yeah, I know that you have very, very close ties to it. Without the physical aspect of a Brazilian community to surround you.
I think that initially when I first came to the United States, like I think so many in the immigrant community, the thought was, I came with my family and the thought was we're going to be here for a few years and then we're going to go back, right? That was, I think, the idea. And that idea lingered in my mind and in my plans for a long time. So when I was in high school, I thought I'm probably going to go to college in Brazil. When I went to college, I thought I'm probably going to finish college and go back to Brazil. And as life happened and time went on, that didn't occur. But during that time, as I kept thinking that that was a strong possibility, that I think encouraged me to keep in close touch with people, with the language, with the culture. And there is a variety of ways to do that, right? Especially nowadays with technology. As time went on and it became, slowly obvious. It was a slow realization that I'm actually not going to go back to live there probably. Then that became a choice instead of a necessity. And I've done so through books. I've done so through TV. I've done so in online, keeping in touch with old friends and family. I've gone back a few times. I will piggyback on something that Ana Clara mentioned, which is the consulate, because the consulate provides essential services to the community. It allows us to actually be citizens of Brazil while not in Brazil in many ways. So they do provide essential services. We vote, those who choose to do so, because of services provided by the consulate, renew our passports because of that. And I know that in the past few years that I've noticed, and I think the whole community has noticed, that those services have shifted and changed how we receive them, how easy it is to receive those services, how accessible they have become or not. And that hasn't happened just here in California. I have family, I just went to Italy, as Mr. Borges mentioned. They are facing the same issues there that we have faced here as far as receiving those services. They're so important for us to keep in touch with our Brazilian identity and exercising our rights as Brazilians. So I think that it was easier then in terms of those kinds of more official governmental services than it is now. So I think that maybe if I were growing up here today, I wouldn't be in touch with it would be a little more difficult to access those services. But as I grew up, I was able to maintain close contact with family and friends and, receive those services for a very long time.
Do you think if you didn't get those services that you might just not be as connected to Brazil?
I will tell you something. When I was 18 years old and I went to the consulate, and when you're Brazilian, you're a man, you're 18, you get your military papers. I renewed my passport. I remember feeling recognized as a person, as a Brazilian. Weird, huh? But I, that was the only place that I could be. So it was actually an important mechanism of connection in a way. I felt like I could exercise my citizenship through the service provided by the consulate. So yes, it was important.
It's a wonderful point. And it's a wonderful point because in our own experience in the Portuguese American community, we were so far, and especially, the whole transportation and technological world was much different, 70, 100 years ago. And then sometimes people say, why did the Portuguese community did not continue to exercise their citizenship, especially because of what you just said. It was very hard to continue, with things so far 100 years ago that people just, immersed. Wise words. Eddie, your thoughts on you're very involved, as you said, with the Portuguese community in the East Bay, El Cerrito, and that surrounding area, the Portuguese community through the Catholic community. How have you seen the Brazilian community and its evolution since 1985? That's it hasn't been a century, but it's been a while, 85 to now, and so I'm sure that you've seen the evolution, because the Brazilian community, on the contrary of the Portuguese community, has had immigration since 85. Ours stopped in 82, 83, where yours continued. So you have obviously seen quite a few different things in the last 35 plus years.
True. When I came, it was very hard, especially in my case. I didn't look for the Brazilian services available. It was more like a surviving and do thing. And as times move forward, I was able to, get involved and meet other people. The one thing I have to say, the consulate has improved a lot in offering services, but also that connection. I think Ana Clara mentioned about that connection with different groups, services, and this has been wonderful. I think a lot of the small groups, especially churches, has been the greatest thing around here to help families to be that support. And I've seen it. I'm talking about all kinds. My negative point that I have to say is, for us as a community, we're still far away to be organized. We could do more. We could do it together. And that has been the biggest problem for the Brazilian community. But in general, I see it as a great has improved a lot. I think last time I mentioned to Valeria, even the quality of life for the Brazilian community has improved. I see people looking for travel, eat better, but that's all come from information, because there's a lot of stuff available there to improve the quality of life. For us in the Brazilian community, the Catholic community, has been great. I mean, it keeps growing. We've seen a lot of new families coming, which is for a while. I think for about 4 years, you could barely see anybody arriving, and the number has grown a lot. Some of them are still doing the hard way, and they're still getting the support with the communities around here and the church. So I think looking in 1985, when I came, and look at now, a huge improvement. And one thing that I have to mention on the business within the Brazilian community, it is amazing, the improvement. I mean, even the people there want to start their business, and if there's a kind of business that required license, they are going for either that or associating with another company that can provide this. It's trying to do it legal, and improving the quality for their workers. And that has been probably the biggest improvement I could say. And I think Ana Clara probably seen that more when people come in. And I see that a great point. I'm very happy for that. And but I think we still need to organize as a group, as a community, all want, and do something bigger. Maybe having what the Hispanic community does,
Let me ask you one question, a follow-up question before I turn it to Valeria, which is the Brazilian being the largest Catholic country in the world, how important has it been have you seen in your involvement in the Brazilian community in the East Bay? How important has the church, in this case specific, the Catholic Church, been for folks to kind of have a connection still to their land and their culture and their language and their religion?
I think it's very important. We still do things as if we're liturgy, the festivities, all the events are just like you were in Brazil. So it's like makes you feel at home, and you are away from home, but you can come in and have that feeling that you are surrounded by your family. I think that's the best part. And I think all churches around here is doing exactly the same. You know, if I look back in the 90s, we had, even the beginning of 2000, in the Brazilian community in general, a lot of people, you know, suffering from depression, stomach problem. I mean, a number of cases of people that are working suddenly pass out. You know, the stress of long hours, having more than one job, but nothing to do after. You come home, is it you drink and go to sleep? So that has changed a lot. And that when I mention about quality of life, this is what I'm talking about. So people have more options, and I'm glad that we are available and make a difference in a lot of families. Indeed, these services are so important. It's kind of the idea of having a Brazilian village surrounded by America, but there is that that sense of community that everyone can come together, whether they drive 5 minutes or 45 minutes to get to the church services. Exactly. Valeria, of course, your experience is also. And again, I mean, there's, it's interesting. It's all men's fault why both Valeria and Anna came to America. But thank God we had these two Americans that brought us these two great talents. So, Valeria, to talk to you a little bit about the community. Of course, we've discussed it. And from your perspective, you've done a lot of work with language, keeping the Portuguese language alive. It's something that, of course, in the Portuguese community, we've worked together because we have an issue, something that we don't want to talk about, but we do have an issue. We don't. I tell my compatriots that the Portuguese, especially the Azorians, que não prezam a língua portuguesa. They turn to English quite easily, as Caio can tell you from the Portuguese American students we had in our classroom, and sometimes it's a chore. But how has language, in your perspective, and how have you used this language to build bridges with other communities of Portuguese, of Lusophone communities, and how important is the language in the Brazilian community? Is the Brazilian community doing a better job? Straight to the point, is the Brazilian community doing a better job than the Portuguese community in keeping their language? I hope so.
Being a newer community, our immigration history is not as old as the Portuguese, more than 100 years. We are taking advantage of the technologies we have available now. I wonder that for Edival in 1985 might have been really hard to keep up the Portuguese with the oldest daughter, and everything, because there wasn't many resources. You depended on things coming from Brazil. Now is a lot easier, and the communities have been organizing itself. I was happy to learn that someone I met during the years of EBAC is creating a school in the Silicon Valley, and she attended a few of our trainings, and so she's growing that school there, and it is great. And many other people that after EBAC continue to teach Portuguese, even if not in an organized way, like a school or so. As far as I know, despite this school very in the beginning stages in the Silicon Valley, I don't know any other school of Portuguese that Brazilians are operating in the greater Bay Area, including Sacramento and so on. But there are individual efforts going on. So that's why I keep insisting and having the teachers training I'm still doing, even though the school doesn't exist anymore, because I think that these individual efforts are going to transform a little bit and the language environment the way it is. So we are still collaborating, you and the Portuguese and the Brazilians, and having the trainings and promoting all that, because I think this is still valuable. And I wish we could have the school districts in the Bay Area, like El Cerrito, Daly City, and so on. They have tons of Brazilian students. The parents organize themselves to have Portuguese language taught in those schools too. I think I agree with Eddie, the organization of the community, the political organization, and at the place of residence is very, almost inexistent. There are a few of us making efforts in that, and I include myself because I'm always making effort on that, but very few of us. We should be pressuring the school districts to have Portuguese language in it. Renato was blessed to have it. He found an environment that was much more welcoming for Portuguese language than we have here, and so on. I think we could do much better as communities, having the Brazilian halls or have a Brazilian Portuguese halls and organize along and having the things more structured. I think we would be able to influence politically a lot more. Like my participation in the CPAC with you, I try to talk to the Brazilians about that and show the importance of us being in Sacramento and in the whole California participating, but this is hard. It is really, there's no interest. Although I agree with Edival as well, that the community is a lot more mature, looking for license, doing things the proper way, eating better, sleeping better, taking care of themselves a lot better than it was in the past. Still, we have a long way to go.
And indeed, in the political world, we're too few, including the Portuguese, the Brazilians, the Cape Verdeans, we're too few not to organize and not to have a political voice that speaks, that if it speaks for Portugal, speaks for Brazil, and if it speaks for Brazil, it speaks for Portugal, vice versa. Before I turn it over to Professor Renato Alvim, because I don't want to manipulate it, although I have lots of questions I could ask you all night long, but in a little bit, we're going to have our musician as well. But before I turn it over to him for a comment and also a question, and I know that Valeria has to leave earlier. Valeria, how do you, I know at one time, and the Brazilian community had representation all over the world with a structured system that was put forth by the Brazilian government, somewhat to what we have with the Conselho das Comunidades Portuguesas in Lisbon, although ours doesn't function too well. So don't take any any great advice on how it works. It works, but it's and I can say this because I was on it for 4 years, and so it's a challenge for. Sometimes our challenge was for the Portuguese in Portugal to understand the diaspora, with so many outside the country, but still didn't. We have half of our population that lives outside, and people didn't understand it. So that structure, does that structure still exist? And tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much for asking that question. No, that structure of the Brazilian government was abolished by the current president on April 11th, 2019, for my dismay. And the whole contact with government, with the Brazilian diaspora was cut. So some of us that still had contacts with some individuals in the government, we kept the contact going. So the CRB, that entity you mentioned, Conselho de Representantes Brasileiros no Exterior, was extinct. It exists today as an association, private group that doesn't do much, but of course I can't be without politics. So I founded with several members of the CRB from most of us, several of us met each other at the CRB, we have the same type of interest. We founded a new movement named Movimento Brasileiros Emigrados, MBE. And we've been promoting lots of, be aware of the politics in your life. So like now, we are promoting, we have a series of videos coming out that are promoting the vote, independent of parties, independent of candidates, but show numbers so we can have arguments to propose things to the people in Congress currently, including having representatives from us in Congress. We have to pass that law because I know the Portuguese have it. You have the CCP, the Community Conselho das Comunidades Portuguesas, but you also have representatives in Congress. And this is very important. We are at CRB, we were at a point that most of what we could do without laws were done. But most everything else we need a change in law. So new public policies, new decrees, new laws that need to pass and articles that must be there. And that is done in Congress. And we need to have representatives there. So MBE is working for that. And I'm so happy you asked that question because I forgot to mention the MBE.
Well, no, please do, because that's important. It's important to have these structures. And although, you know, sometimes they don't work the way we want them to work, but they're there. You know, you mentioned that the Portuguese can vote, like you as well, but that we have 2 representatives. We only have 4 representatives in Parliament, 2 from Europe, and the other 2 is called O Resto do Mundo, which is just wonderful. I mean, like, you know, the world is Europe, and then there's the rest of the world. But anyway, the vernacular is just all about wrong. But the 2 most our problem, and that you will have, hopefully you won't have actually, is that the political parties control who the their representatives are going to be. In other words, they have never had someone from the diaspora, someone that lives in the United States, be the cabeça de lista, as we call it in Portugal, the number 1 that will probably get elected. Usually the person from the United States is like number 4, number 5, and we know that's not going to happen because only 2 of them can get elected from the whole world. So that will be the next one. But the first step, you're right, is getting representation from the Brazilian diaspora in your Congress, indeed. Renato, I've spoken too much, and you're the Brazilian of the 2 of us. I'm just a fan of Brazil.
Oh, yeah, and the conversation is going well. Denise, you're Brazilian at heart, at least a little bit, right, Denise? I was just wondering if you guys could name what, in your opinion, in your experience, would be the biggest challenge that a person or the Brazilian community or a person who comes to the US to join a Brazilian community, what would be the biggest challenge or the first big challenge they would face, in your opinion and experience?
I believe the biggest challenge is being far from family and friends and everything we knew until we moved here. I believe the internet is amazing, but we need some time to learn new ways to have relationship with our friends and everything. So I am thankful to Facebook, to Instagram, to WhatsApp that allows me to be part of my community in Brazil too. And most recently, I am grateful for the Zoom events that in fact allows us to be far away, but at the same time to participate with friends, with family, with professional connections of events that otherwise we will not be able to be part of. But I think it's the distance of friends and family that it's the biggest challenge.
Eu ia dizer, a gente tem uma palavra para isso, né, em português. A saudade. Caio, desculpa.
I would say that, I mean, really varies from person to person, from reality to reality. But I think the two biggest immediate challenges when you first move, I think, I would guess, would be language and mental health and its broad, meanings, because all of a sudden you get disconnected from loved ones and from your lived reality, and you become almost like a child, right, for many adults, which can be very difficult on somebody's mental health, I think. So I think those are very immediate challenges. And like you mentioned, saudades, right? That word that I think stays with us forever, particularly once you leave. And for many people also, I think there are some legal issues, right? When you immigrate, that could be really immigration issues, or it could also be, how do I was a lawyer in Brazil, how can I be a lawyer here? I was a doctor in Brazil, how can I be a doctor here? So those are barriers also that the community faces, I think.
Should I say?
Por favor.
I think Caio said something very interesting. It depends on varies person to person. You will have difficulties on the job, with the language. It takes sometimes and forever for some people to break through that. I left the Brazil, but your heart's still there. But I'm going to tell one thing that I find that very difficult. I think Valeria and Ana Clara are in a position they might not be in this situation, but for Brazilian, he can come here and believe me, I think 99.9% end up liking US. But breaking that culture, you know what I mean, to become in America, to be more Americanized. What I'm saying is that you're not losing what's yours, but involved with the American community. I think that is probably the hardest thing for the majority. And you talk to people, they still have the Brazilian group. There are events, but going beyond that is impossible for some people. It's hard to say how can you solve this, because I think it depends on the individual, but I think that's in general for the Brazilians, that's a very hard thing to do. And I still see this today.
I would like to make a comment regarding to it. I think the women of the Brazilian community, they are a little more organized than the men. We have several events for Brazilian women to give information about how to behave in the United States, what is acceptable in Brazil that is not acceptable here, how to navigate the legal system. For example, on my area, besides mental health, that is really important, domestic violence, because there is a big difference between what is acceptable in a relationship in Brazil. In Brazil, people yell at each other and they are discussing the relationship. They are passionate. They are not abusing each other under the eyes of the Brazil law. In the US, you can discuss the relationship, but you cannot yell at each other. It's your husband, it's your wife, but you have to keep the tone down. So in the Brazilian community, mostly with the women, we are able to do some events and spread awareness and information about the difference between Brazil and US in several perspectives, that you need to live here or you'll be in trouble. And so it's a very important point.
Yeah, I think that it brings something so important about the cultural shock that Eddie mentioned and Ana Clara is bringing again, how to operate here in a way that it is acceptable. And I believe the work that you guys do through your job or through the service is brings back that possibility of to keep the connection with the motherland, or to keep this sense of belonging. Because sometimes I believe, and I've been here for over 20 years also, and there is that one time or that one event like, oh, Carnaval, oh, it's that time. I'm going to work on Monday morning, and I check my phone and everybody posting pictures in Carnaval, and I think, oh, great, here I am. But this sense of belonging, it's so important to keep the mental health, or to keep us like, okay, yeah, I can survive without one more Carnaval, but there is always this possibility to reconnect and to keep the connection, and that's sometimes the break point. You can stay here, okay, no, I can't stand this, or it's Christmas, I cannot spend Christmas far from my family any longer. And I think that this sense of belonging is something very crucial. And
indeed, I don't know if anybody wants to comment that, the sense of belonging, how important that is. And I don't know how many carnavals you've missed in the last 20 years, Renato, but you better make up by starting to go into some of them. I also wanted to ask you, and we're going to try to end this part here in about the next 12 minutes or so. So politics are what they are, and but I do think that we need to talk about the election. It's an important day for the Brazilians, independently of where they are. It's always an important day for anybody, independently of it is, because elections are the dia de festa of the democracies wherever they are. Democracies do not survive without elections, although sometimes we do what we do in elections. However, and I'm kind of missing Valeria not being here, because I know she would look forward to this part of the conversation immensely. However, let me start with maybe with Eddie this time, and he's been through quite a few elections, as he mentioned in that very important date when he left Brazil. How important is this election, Eddie, to the Brazilians abroad? And more importantly, also, if all of you would comment, how important do you think this election is to the Brazilian image itself, whether it be in other ethnic communities in the United States, Hispanic communities especially, because they keep, most of my students at Fresno State that I teach now, they're interested in Portuguese because they're interested in Brazil. They like soccer, they like samba, they like, some of the wonderful things that the country has. And so, and I know that Renato is obviously, him being Brazilian, has that upper hand. However, so my question is, how important is this election to the Brazilian diaspora, to Brazilians abroad? But how important it is also, from your perspective, Eddie, for the image of Brazil and the outcome of this election, for the image of Brazil in the U.S. and throughout the world, but in Portuguese-speaking countries, I think most I shouldn't say most, all Portuguese-speaking countries understand what's going on in Brazil. I mean, you can't turn on a Portuguese news channel without there being at least one news item about Brazil on a daily basis, and the same thing in Africa, in the Portuguese-speaking countries. But in the non-Portuguese-speaking countries, how important do you think this is for the image?
Well, I think every election is important. I'm very disappointed with what's going on. I think Brazil still, our politics is still very much a colonial. What I see. You always, I use the rules of 4 years. Okay, 4 years. That's what you deserve. If you're good, you come back and continue. Unfortunately, what Brazilians are looking at is totally different. So I don't see much of a change happening with this election unless a big surprise showed up. But anyway, yes, Brazil needs to improve the image. And I still very hopeful that something really happened. Based on what we see, the survey, that's not going to happen this time. But I'm still hoping for the best. A country that does not take care of its people, it cannot be seen well throughout the world. There's, when I say a colonial politics, it's basically people wants power and dominates, popularity, and they use their popularity to saying that I'm taking care of you, but look at the history. We still over 30 million people that are not eating well, or some days they don't have food. Some of these governments saying that they spend a lot to improve the education. Well, Brazil, just a couple of years back, a lot of companies that was expanding couldn't find qualified workers. That tells you you're not spending me. Anyway, I'm just hoping for the best, but I don't have much expectation.
Interesting. It's an interesting take, because a lot of the Brazilians I've been speaking with think that it is going to change. So, Ana Clara, your thoughts on, without getting very political, but you can get as political as you want. However, the idea of how important this election is to the Brazilian community, and also to the image of Brazil throughout the world, and especially in the US.
I think the Brazil in general is having a bad image, and I don't think matters a lot which side is going to win. I think what Brazil is showing is a lack of tolerance and a lack of understanding of the democracy and the political system. I would like to be able to say which side I am without being attacked, personally attacked. I would like to be able to discuss ideas without being personally attacked. We can disagree about what we think would be the right path for the country, but we can be friends. We don't have to avoid the conversation to be able to keep the friendship. I strongly believe that Brazil's biggest problem is not which candidate will be elected. It's the corruption. This is what worries me in Brazil, and I think this is what damages the Brazilian image for the foreign countries. Brazil has everything. Brazil could be a great country, but it is not. There is a lot of people immigrating for social problems. The crime is rising. There is a lot of people hungry because of this pandemic, and the country is not able to help these people. So worries me a lot that in the middle of this crisis, we have a lack of ability to understand that we are in the same boat. I might think that the left is better, I might think the right is better, I might think the center is better, but is everybody together? So I will keep the country, if the president I don't like is elected, I hate my country and I'm gonna work against it. No, it happens, it's the politics. I think it's healthy, the shift of power. I would not like that all the right wins or all the left wins forever. No, I think needs some balance. It's one-sided and it's the other, and this is what will make the country better. So my take in I personally worry about the corruption. Doesn't matter who wins. I would like to be able to say, okay, it's not my candidate, or it is my candidate, and he's really doing it for the good of the country. And I have questions about it when I look the pool of candidates we have in Brazil. So honestly, I'm gonna vote Sunday, but I'm not sure to whom I'm gonna vote, because I cannot believe on their good intent. I know if you are a candidate, you look for power, but I would like to choose an honest candidate. And I don't know who is the honest candidate in this case.
Unfortunately, it's happening not just in Brazil, in many countries throughout the world. But you're so right. Corruption and politics, and of course, also the perception that is given, to democracies all over the world. Democracy is whether we want to admit it or not, democracies are in jeopardy in many parts of the world. Caio, your thoughts as a someone who left Brazil at the age of 14, someone who likes, I think, a political discussion now and then, from what I remember when you were in school, and of course, what do you think? First and foremost, how important is this election for you as a Brazilian outside of the country that you were born, and for the image of Brazil in the world, but certainly in the United States?
Well, I think the election is important enough that I'm going to drive all the way to San Francisco to vote.
That's 4 hours for those of you who don't know. Yes.
Yeah, I have made plans already to do so. I think that this election and the last election cycle were very poor when it comes to ideas. We have candidates who did not seem like it was even necessary to publish a platform this time around, leading candidates for that matter. So we don't know what they're going to do or how they intend on accomplishing their goals. In fact, we don't even quite know what their goals are. But we're going to vote, right? We're going to vote because we know what happened in the last 4 years. Some of us supported some actions that were taken, some of us did not, and we're going to vote based on that. Now, in terms of Brazil's image, I think we can say that Brazil's image took a beating, not just in the last 4 years. I think it started even before that. I think that if I may say in explicit terms, I think the rest of the world does not want the current president to win. At least by the rest of the world, I mean the United States and most of Europe. I think that if he does win, it'll be perceived in a negative light by both Europe and the US. So there's that. And as far as I think Brazil's corruption problem, which we all know exists. I mean, most of us, I think, can say that we've experienced it firsthand, right? Anybody who has lived in Brazil, has relatives in Brazil, has experienced the corruption. We don't just watch it on the news. It's part of our lived reality in our interactions with government. But if you think about it, it's so much part of our social fabric and our way of doing business in politics that when somebody attempted, to defeat the forces of corruption, and you can say that the way they did it was right or wrong. If you recall, the economy started to unravel because nobody knew how to do business anymore. A president cannot govern today unless he buys votes in Congress. And that has been the case for many years. Today, that buying has been legalized, essentially, as we know with the Orçamento Secreto and all of that. We have legalized vote buying in Brazil's Congress. Isn't that crazy? So corruption has become part of our political and social fabric. But hopefully, the election's results will not be contested. Hopefully, they'll be accepted by everybody, including the losing candidates. Hopefully, there'll be no violence. That's what I would hope. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. For the first time, I think as an adult, I can say that maybe there will be violence. Will the results be accepted? I don't know. Right now, the president says that he's going to win. So the polls don't really show that. Will he accept defeat if he indeed loses? So that's up in the air. So if we get through that hurdle, and it is a big hurdle of democracy being maintained, the results being accepted, then maybe we can start talking about how can we actually govern, how can the winning candidate actually govern. Hopefully it'll be in a way that builds bridges. Hopefully it'll be in a way that listens to not only one side but many sides, that is respectful to those that disagree with you. That's, and I thought I said it very nicely. You don't have to agree to be able to be civil with each other. Hopefully whoever wins will be able to really lead a government that is democratic in the way that it treats all of its citizens, instead of treating some of us as almost like enemies of the country and the political system, which I think many of us have felt like, especially in the last 4 years.
Indeed, and that's a good way to end it. And kudos to your country for having such smart young people like Caio. I mean, and Clara, and of course, as veterans like Eddie and myself, and has been living here for 40 years and almost, and still keeps these roots to Brazil. I'm thankful to all three of you. I think Renato, I don't know if you have any other comments or questions. I think we'd like to bring maybe Paulo on. We have about 20 minutes left, and we'd love for him to oh, there he is. Look at that. Look at that. And
Hello, everybody.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for being here. What a wonderful way to end this commemoration, 4 days of discussing Brazil and discussing everything from Dona Leopoldina, in the first night, to discussing the Brazilian diaspora and the current process, and ending it, of course, with music. So Paulo is if you don't mind, before you treat us to some wonderful music, if you just tell us a little bit about yourself, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Denise, for having me, and everyone in the panel. I am a Brazilian singer-songwriter, producer in San Francisco. I've been here for the past 21 years, and it's been such a journey, actually. And just like being fly on the wall here, listening to you guys bring your perspectives about the Brazilian image abroad, and what we're fighting against this election, and the participation and union that we lack in the steps towards becoming a more organized and more harmonic society. I have to acknowledge some of these folks. Eddie, I know you personally, and I know your presence is extremely important for our community. And I just feel like as a Brazilian in the Bay, we've been losing spaces and gaining other spaces. So I'm very hopeful that more of these events and more of you guys show up on my daily live feed here. With that, if you guys are ready for some music, I do have some content for you.
Oh, we are. I'm looking forward to it.
I would like to start with this piece that is cordel. If you guys know, cordel is northeastern poetry. And I was recently in Boston for the Forró Fest USA, which happens annually in Somerville, the biggest Brazilian community in the States, at least is that what they say. And it was really interesting. And going there, I perceived that we've arrived in a place with Brazilian culture in the States that I didn't experience 20 years ago. And then I wrote a few of these lines that tell a little bit of my story. cheguei aqui com $20 no bolso de trás, mal sabia eu do que era capaz. Logo no segundo dia, café com pipoca pra fome atazanar. E numa tal gasolineira, $5 a hora eu passei a ganhar. Ali com os mexica, na Estereosol, aprendi malandragem e também espanhol. Com um social falso e muito ligeiro, fui fritar hambúrguer e trabalhar de pedreiro. Quebrando parede e construindo banheiro, fui vendo crescer o meu montinho de dinheiro. Entre uma pizza e outra, ou na onda de jornaleiro, percebi que meu tempo valia mais que o dinheiro. Na sede do sonho, peguei meus din-din e voltei pra escola pra aprender um tiquim. Enrolei muito cabo, descarreguei caminhão, levantei torre de luz e montei muito som. No brilho dos palcos que me enchia os olhos, com muita dedicação fui engrenando o negócio. Pendurado nas trusses montando LED, na produção aprendi o ABC. Hoje olho para trás, meu caminho imigrante, sei que ainda há muito a fazer na minha missão de cantante. Celebrando as conquistas e mais um dia adiante, sigo produzindo, aprendendo e migrando. Cada vez que eu piso no palco, seja no estádio ou no restaurante, me lembro do sonho que segue pujante. Sou eu que move montanhas, sou eu, imigrante, que venho aqui dizer que vale a pena, navegante. Nunca desista, pois aqui tens um exemplo de um menino interiorano que não sabia de nada, mas que no futuro simplesmente confiava. Se agarre na sua lida, não seja escravo do dinheiro. Não se esqueça de seu sonho e por esse trabalhe duro o dia inteiro. Não se deixe enganar pelo sonho americano, pois o seu sonho é seu, não tem nacionalidade. Construa a sua trilha, viva a sua verdade, pois a vida é curta, meu caro, e o que vale é a felicidade. Eita, sonho. Ó, tem um aplauso também, quer? Yeah, these lines reflect a lot of my experience in the community. Sometimes we simply get lost by the stereotypical American dream, and without psychological and professional support, we end up going places that just take us away from the track of our dreams. I have been playing a lot of northeastern Brazilian music in San Francisco, and we have a forró band that's called Vixe Maria right here, and we play monthly here in the city. So if you'd like to know more about us, please find me, Vixe Maria, on all sorts of platforms out there. One big inspiration for me has been Alceu Valença. Alceu Valença has joined both the traditional forró coming all the way from Gonzaga in the 40s to the more like modern and psychedelic sounds of the 70s. And to this day, Alceu Valença is alive, well, and touring the world. And one of the songs that I found interesting to play here regarding saudade and regarding the experience that Eddie was sharing with us, that folks get isolated. They work all day long, and then they go back home and have nothing else to do but to drink and to watch Netflix. And that is really, really dangerous. And touching on that theme of solitude, I'll play the song called Solidão. A solidão é fera, é amiga das horas, é prima irmã do tempo e faz nossos relógios caminharem lentos, causando um descompasso no meu coração. Solidão. solidão dos astros, a solidão da lua, a solidão da noite, a solidão da rua. Solidão é fera, é a amiga das horas, é prima irmã do tempo e faz nossos relógios caminharem lentos, causando um descompasso no meu coração. Aê! Vamos aplaudir, vamos aplaudir. Atenção, amigos! It's great that I bring my own applause because I started doing this live streaming things over the pandemic, and I noticed that folks want to applaud, but then the applause come like out of tempo and I know exactly how that goes. Oh, Jesus. But it's been a learning curve, guys. I'm really happy to be able to share my music, my culture, and a bit of my life with you all via Zoom. It's pretty impressive. And thinking of that theme, I wrote a song during the pandemic that's called Se Liga na Minha Live, which, if there's any non-Portuguese speakers here, I translated to tune in to my live stream. And it goes like this. Gotta be ready, folks. Get the broadband going. A onda agora lá no meu interior é tocar moda de viola pro computador. No telefone eu engato um 5G e faço a selfie de biquinho aqui pra você. A moda agora não é mais tocar na TV, que é coisa de coroa e ninguém mais vê. O negócio é transmitir no celular. Com plano ilimitado eu vou fazer live. Se liga na minha live. Conto com a sua presença na conexão. Aperta aí o share e compartilha então. Eu te prometo, é somente dessa vez. É conteúdo inédito, revolucionês. Viver de música não é mole pra ninguém. Agora piorou, pandemizou, meu bem. Me dá um like pra somar no movimento. Quem sabe o Google Ads ainda me dá dinheiro. Se liga na minha live. Se liga na minha live. Tune into my live stream. Tune into my live stream. Tune into my live stream. Live stream, live stream. Se liga na minha live. Se liga na minha live. Se liga na minha live. Eu vou deixar o QR Code aqui, ó. Se você quiser me mandar um Venmo. É isso, rapaziada. Vamos lá, palma. Atenção, amigos, a palma. Ui. Guys, also, we just to say that there's quite a bit of Northeastern culture in San Francisco. We have weekly dance classes now. There's a Coco group, which is really fun, with Maria Padilha. And the highlight of our year of events, it's really the Festa Juninas. If you have not yet had an opportunity, please come down and visit our local churches. The Church of San John in San Francisco, the one Eddie represents in El Cerrito, also in San Rafael. It's really a beautiful commotion to see how folks come together for the Festa Junina parties. And hopefully we extend that to your communities up north. Yeah, let's talk offline, as they say. I would like to actually, since we're all here, open for questions. You guys have questions? Like, you see this guy wearing a cocar with a pink background. Like, what? Questions, everyone?
I have a question. So you said that you present monthly. Is there a specific place all
Yes.
the time, or does it change?
We are working in partnership with Bisa Baobab. Bisa Baobab is a Senegalese restaurant in the Mission District. They opened a new place which has also been hosting dance classes. They host tango, flamenco, salsa, bachata, and forró just came in as another cultural expression. So Bisa Baobab on Mission between 20th and 21st. And if you go to our Instagram, Vish Maria, you'll find all the dates and the venues. And thanks for asking. And how much time do we have? Do we play another song?
One more song would be awesome if we could.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I want to play the song that talks to me quite a bit about what Brazil is, and it has given me inspiration to keep going. And super fun song. It's from Arte Popular. You might know it, and if you know it, feel free to stand up and dance. E a galera lá no Morro do Salgueiro e Vidigal tá querendo balançar. E a torcida do Corinthians e do Palmeiras quer o quê? Tá querendo balançar. O povo do Nordeste do Chachado quer o quê? Tá querendo balançar. A Bahia do Batuque, da Mantiga e coisa e tal tá querendo balançar. Brasileiro vive na raça, o pagode é o canto da massa. Tá plantando até bananeira. É José, João, é Ferreira, mas ninguém me reconhece como um grande cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Ninguém me reconhece como um grande cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Ninguém me reconhece como um grande cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Ninguém me reconhece como um grande cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Requebra então, requebra de cá, requebra de lá. Tá querendo balançar um olho daqui e o outro acolá. Tá querendo balançar na palma da mão pro povo esquentar. Tá querendo balançar e blá 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 e blá blá blá. Tá querendo balançar. I got my mo, love, 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 Jojo. I got my mo, love, 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 Jojo, yeah. I got my mo, love, 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 Jojo. I got my mo. E o povo da galera da Mandiga e coisa e tal. Até a torcida do Corinthians e do Palmeiras quer também. O povo do Nordeste e do Chachado quer o quê? E da Bahia e da Mandiga e coisa e tal. Brasileiro vive na raça, o pagode é o canto da massa. Tá plantando bananeira, é José, João, Ferreira. Ninguém me reconhece como um grande cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Eu quero meu green card pra virar um cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Me dá o meu green card pra eu virar um cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Eu também quero meu green card pra virar um cidadão. É cidadão, é cidadão, é cidadão. Pem, pem, pem. Requebra de cá, requebra de lá. Tá querendo balançar na palma da mão pro povo esquentar. Tá querendo balançar um olho blá, 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 e blá, blá, blá. Tá querendo balançar. Deus abençoe o Brasil. I got my mom. Love, 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 Jojo. I got my mom. Love, 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 Jojo, yeah. I got my mom. Love, 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 Jojo. I got my mom. That's it, everybody. Thank you. Let me get the claps going. All right. Let me take the reverb out of the vocals here so I can actually talk to you guys without sounding like I'm inside of a cave, right? Okay. Oh, wow. How's everyone doing?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
That was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I think all of those who are following us enjoying it as well. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. What a wonderful way to end this commemoration, Renato, of the bicentennial of Brazil's independence, correct?
Yes, we love some music, and we love Brazilian music. It reminded me a lot of Gilberto Gil had I think late in the 80s. When he was talking about technology and music, back then a CD called Parabolic Ambará.
Oh, yeah.
That he mentions a lot of this, and it reminded me a lot on your Cordel.
Big compliment. Big compliment. One of my heroes for sure.
That's good taste. Thank you. It was great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. My pleasure, you guys.
Thank you,
Hope
Paulo.
to be back here on the 300 years of independence, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope you are. I won't be, but I hope you are. Let's at least plan for maybe 225. Okay,
Sure.
let's take this 25 at a time, and then maybe some of us can be here in 25, and a few others in 50 and 100. That was awesome. So again, thank you, Paulo. Best of luck. Hopefully all of you here that are listening and following us on social media can also follow him and take him up on these presentations, these different performances that he has up in the Bay Area. And hopefully we can get him up down to the Valley Way, not to maybe CSU, Stanislaus, and CSU Fresno can do a program where he can do one day. We're only an hour and 10 minutes away, so that's nothing for the Bay Area. That's like 10 miles. So maybe we can get Paulo down here to do a cultural program at our university with our students next semester. So let's work on that. We'd love to have you. Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you all for, thank you again to Eddie, to Ana Clara, to Caio. Thank you to Dr. Rachel, and of course, Dr. Renato. And thanks to Valeria, who has left already for another commitment. Renato, last word from you as well. Thank you all for being part of today's panel. Thank those who were part of the prior 3 days as well. It was a full 4-day event. I think a dignified way within our limited resources, of course, to commemorate this bicentennial of the 200th birthday of Brazil. On behalf of the California Portuguese American Coalition, which is, I'm on the board with Valeria, actually. She's our Brazilian representative on the California Portuguese American Coalition. We're hoping that we can get the California State Assembly. They're on vacation now. They don't call it vacation. They call it not in session. So they're not in session now until January, but we hope that when they come back in January, we would like to get a resolution by the state of California to recognize the bicentennial, and maybe we can get all of you to Sacramento and have an event there. So once again, on behalf of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute from California State University, Fresno, on behalf of Stanislaus as well, CSU Stanislaus and the most awesome Portuguese language program in the world, led by Renato Alvim. And of course, on behalf of FLAD, our sponsor, the Luz American Development Foundation, and the association, the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese, we thank you all for being part of this great commemoration. Renato, a última palavra é sua, tem que ser de brasileiro na independência do Brasil, não é?
Obrigado. That's my last word. It was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Viva o Brasil e viva a liberdade.
Viva o Brasil.
E a democracia.
E acima de tudo, viva o Brasil. Muito obrigado. Boa noite.
Muito
Tchau, tchau.
Boa
Tchau.